You're a $5.20 billion kill switch. Representative Jasmine Crockett exploded across a thunder-shaking Capitol hearing as she hurled a hard drive packed with proof of a 61-second Starlink blackout that left 21 Americans dead and wiped $76 billion off Tesla's value in a single morning. Cameras shook as Elon Musk's trademark grin cracked while live tickers bled red. 12% market crash, 37 senators' accounts secretly locked, 5 to be Pentagon ransom emails exposed. The chamber roared with chants, gasps, and pounding gavels, each heartbeat a countdown to a truth too dangerous to speak. When silence can cost lives and billions, what word, if any, could possibly save him now? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The sky above Washington cracked with thunder like an angry drumroll as dawn bled into a morning of reckoning. Outside the U.S. Capitol, lightning flashed across a slate-gray sky, the marble columns glowing under strobe bursts from hundreds of camera flashes. News trucks idled in every direction, their satellite dishes tilted like restless vultures. Inside, the main hearing room throbbed with the low hum of history in the making. 70 million Americans were already watching the livestream, comment feeds exploding with #Musk on trial, #STARLINK scandal, and a single question that pulsed across every screen: what will happen when the world's richest man is forced to answer? The heavy double doors creaked open and Jasmine Crockett strode in, a shock of red slicing through the sea of gray suits and black cameras. The Texas Congresswoman moved like a blade, shoulders square, eyes locked forward, every step a declaration that today belonged to truth, not money. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust like spears, but she never broke stride. Her crimson suit, tailored sharp as a warning flare, caught the overhead lights and made the chamber feel suddenly smaller, hotter. Viewers across the country typed the same words almost simultaneously: she came to fight. At the far end of the witness table sat Elon Musk, legs crossed, fingers steepled in a pose that was part monk, part chess grandmother. His face wore the faintest trace of amusement, a half-smile that said he'd already mapped every move on the board. Cameras zoomed in on his eyes, cold, glittering, calculating, as if the richest man alive was quietly wagering the future of American democracy against the power of a single hearing. Behind him, a digital ticker scrolled breaking updates: Tesla -3% pre-market, Starlink contracts under DOJ review, whispers of a Pentagon email leak that might detonate before launch. The audience felt the tension cold tighter with every second. Security guards shifted uneasily, palms near holsters. Staffers clutched tablets as fresh notifications cascaded across screens. Market volatility warning, anonymous whistleblower to testify, emergency Senate session scheduled. Outside, protesters chanted beneath the storm, some demanding Musk's arrest, others waving banners that read "Innovation is not a crime." The air carried the sharp, metallic scent of rain and electricity, as if the atmosphere itself was waiting for a spark. Jasmine reached her seat without looking at Musk, but her mere presence was a challenge, a human counterweight to a trillion-dollar empire. He tilted his head slightly, like a predator assessing prey, and for the briefest instant their eyes met. Millions of viewers felt the collision through their screens, a silent duel charged with the weight of everything that might be revealed in the hours ahead. Somewhere in the back, a gavel struck wood and the chairman's voice echoed, "This hearing will come to order," but the country barely heard it. All anyone could think was the question hanging in the stormlit air: how much power can one billionaire wield before democracy fights back? The chairman's gavel had barely echoed before Jasmine Crockett moved. In one swift motion, she drew a black hard drive from her briefcase and drove it onto the mahogany table with a crack that rattled microphones and made every camera jerk into focus. Gasps tore through the chamber. On the massive screen behind her, the Capitol feed instantly locked on the device, its red indicator light blinking like a detonator. "These," Jasmine declared, voice slicing through the storm outside, "are the unfiltered Starlink logs from the night 21 Americans died." Her words hit the room like a blast wave. Market tickers along the bottom of the live broadcast flickered, Tesla down another 1.2% in seconds, while chat feeds erupted with fire emojis and frantic speculation. Musk tilted his head, lips curling into a thin smile that could have been amusement or contempt. He leaned toward the microphone with the casual grace of someone about to deliver a killing move in a chess match. "Logs are just data, Congresswoman," he said, his tone dripping with polite venom. "You can twist numbers into anything. A glitch is not a crime. His eyes sparkled as if daring her to push further, and a faint ripple of laughter spread from the back rows where a few of his supporters sat, breaking the tense silence like a taunt. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stabbed a manicured finger at the drive. This isn't a glitch. This is a deliberate, 42-minute blackout, 42 minutes in the middle of a Category 5 rescue operation in Galveston. Do you know what happens when hospitals lose satellite communication during a storm surge? 17 children in critical condition, for seniors on life support, all cut off while your satellites mysteriously went dark. Her voice rose to a controlled roar that filled every corner of the hall. 21 dead because someone in your empire decided leverage was worth more than lives. The crowd erupted, half in applause, half in outrage, turning the chamber into a battlefield of cheers, boos, and camera shutters. Musk smiled, thin to a blade. If the federal government maintained its own infrastructure, he shot back, Texas wouldn't have to depend on a private company to save its people. The words were soft, but the implication was brutal. Your government is incompetent, and I own the sky. The audience gasped as if he had slapped the entire committee. Jasmine leaned forward, her red suit blazing under the lights, and for a heartbeat the storm outside seemed to sync with the storm inside, thunder rolling as if the heavens themselves demanded an answer. Phones across America lit up with real-time polls. Is Musk guilty of sabotage or just smarter than Washington? Comment feeds fractured into warring camps, every second of silence feeding the frenzy. The chairman struggled to restore order, that the noise only swelled, a human tide of disbelief and fury. Jasmine held Musk's gaze without blinking, the hard drive's red light pulsing between them like a heartbeat of accusation. And as millions watched that tiny blinking signal, one question surged louder than the storm pounding the Capitol dome. Was this chaos the work of faulty code or the calculated bargaining chip of a billionaire who thinks he can hold a nation hostage? The storm outside seemed to lean closer as Jasmine slid a new stack of papers across the polished table, each page stamped with the unmistakable seal of the United States Department of Defense. Cameras zoomed in and the scrolling headlines on every screen flared crimson. Pentagon email leak, $5.2 billion Starlink deal under fire. Jasmine's voice was low but sharp enough to cut steel. These are internal Pentagon communications, she said. Her eyes locked on Musk. They show Starlink activation was deliberately delayed until a $5.2 billion upgrade contract was signed. Your satellites went dark while a government desperate to save lives was forced to pay ransom. Gasps rippled through the chamber, a living wave of disbelief that echoed into the thunder outside. Musk leaned back with the lazy elegance of a man testing the weight of his own shadow. The half-smile returned, colder this time, the glint in his eyes hard enough to pierce glass. Careful, Congresswoman, he said, his voice silk over steel. Free speech has its price. The words floated across the room like a slow-moving blade, polite on the surface yet carrying a threat as unmistakable as the lightning crack that followed. A few staffers glanced toward the exits, as if those 6 syllables had tilted the room off its axis. Jasmine didn't blink. Is that a warning or a confession? She asked, her tone steady though the tension in the air felt like the second before a dam breaks. She held up one email, projected now on the giant screen behind her. Delay activation until leverage confirmed the signature glow under the chamber lights, impossible to ignore. Whispers surged through the audience, reporters pounding keyboards as breaking news alerts shriek onto phones across the country. Wall Street tickers responded instantly, Tesla down another 2%, SpaceX bonds wobbling like a fevered heartbeat. For a heartbeat the hearing teeter on the edge of chaos. Musk drummed his fingers once, twice, a subtle rhythm that somehow drowned out the thunder. His lawyers whispered furiously, but he kept his eyes on Jasmine, expression unreadable. Was he daring her to reveal more, or silently calculating the next move in a game only he understood? The committee chair cleared his throat, but the sound was swallowed by the electricity of a nation holding its breath. Millions watching from living rooms and subway platforms felt the balance of power flicker like the storm lights overhead. Did Jasmine just place the final piece of evidence on the board, or had she stepped into a trap laid by a billionaire who thrives on weaponized chaos? The red Pentagon seal glowed brighter on every screen as the question thundered through the country like the storm outside. When these emails ignite the public, who will shatter first, the congresswoman who dared to accuse, or the man who believes the sky itself is his bargaining chip? Rain hammered the Capitol dome as the hearing reconvened, the storm outside sensing with the rising voltage inside. A new witness took to stand. Special Agent Dana Klein, the FBI's lead cyber forensics investigator, a woman with the composure of a sniper and a voice calibrated to detonate on impact. She opened a silver briefcase, revealing a slim tablet seal in a government evidence pouch. "These are Starlink's internal server logs from the night of the blackout," she announced, her eyes scanning the committee like a laser. "They show manual override commands, not system failure, initiated from an encrypted executive channel at 20 to 14 hours, precisely 3 minutes before the 42-minute outage began." The room inhaled as one. Even the storm seemed to pause. Klein tapped the tablet and the screen behind her flared to life with a scrolling cascade of timestamps, IP addresses, and cryptic command strings glowing red against black. "These signals," she continued, "required top-level authentication. Someone with root access delayed Starlink activation. This was not a glitch. It was intent." Reporters in the gallery shot to their feet, camera shutters firing like automatic weapons. Real-time tickers at the bottom of the broadcast spiked. Tesla minus 4.7%. SpaceX bonds under review. Hashtag who gave the order trending #1 worldwide. Jasmine leaned forward, voice sharpened by the weight of the evidence. "Agent Klein, does your analysis show who initiated these commands?" Klein hesitated, the silence stretching like a taut wire. "The channel requires executive-level credentials," she said carefully, "but the encryption asks the individual login." However, she swiped again, and the screen displayed a geolocation trace narrowing to a single facility. SpaceX Mission Control Private Suite 3B. A collective gasp swept the chamber, followed by the frantic clatter of journalists refreshing their feeds. Jasmine pounced, eyes locked on Musk. "Private Suite 3B, that's your personal operations hub, isn't it? Did you authorize this override?" Her words cracked like lightning. Musk leaned back, crossing his arms with infuriating calm, the faintest smirk flickering across his face. "You really think I micromanage routers?" he said, letting the sarcasm drip like acid. "If every packet delay is a crime, half of Washington should be in prison." Laughter and easy scatter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension but also seeding doubt. Was this arrogance or a billionaire exposing government incompetence? Jasmine pressed harder, rattling off call logs, access protocols, and contract deadlines, but Musk's expression remained unreadable, a mask of calculated detachment. Each non-answer fed a creeping uncertainty that slithered through the audience and into the millions watching at home. Was the evidence airtight, or merely pointing to a phantom inside the system? Markets wavered on the edge of panic. Chat feeds split between cries of "lock him up" and "witch hunt." The chamber felt less like a courtroom and a high-stakes poker table where every breath could flip the game. And as the storm outside roared back to life, one question pounded in every viewer's chest like a second heartbeat. Is the trail of digital smoke leading straight to Elon Musk or to a hidden saboteur who knows how to wear his face? The chamber trembled with anticipation as Elon Musk finally leaned toward the microphone, the faint hum of electronics and storm outside merging into a single electric tension. He began softly, almost conversational, but each word carried the force of a missile. "What you call sabotage," he said, "I sweeping the room, I call survival. Innovation doesn't wait for permission slips from Washington. While bureaucrats argue over forms, my teams launch rockets, power hospitals, and keep this country ahead of every rival on Earth." His voice climbed like a rocket breaking atmosphere, drawing cheers from a pocket of supporters in the gallery. "I am not the villain here. I am the shield standing between America and a future controlled by slow, frightened government regulators who would rather we stay grounded while the rest of the world passes us by." The storm outside cracked like applause as the gallery erupted in competing shouts of approval and outrage. Before Jasmine could respond, a sharp voice sliced through the chaos. Representative Jim Jordan surged forward from the minority bench, waving a stack of papers like a torch. "This is a witch hunt," he barked, his Ohio twang sharpened by adrenaline. "The Congresswoman isn't interested in justice, she wants a headline. She's attacking the one man who dares to challenge big government with real innovation." He turned to the cameras, finger stabbing the air. "Do you want Washington deciding who can speak, who can build, who can dream? Because that's what this circus is about." The room fractured into rival chess. "Let her speak, and innovation saves lives." Jasmine shot to her feet, red suit blazing like a warning flare. Her voice cut through the uproar, steady and unyielding. This is not about headlines, and it is not about dreams. This is about real lives that ended because someone valued leverage over humanity. 73% of the victims from the Texas blackout were from low-income, minority communities. They weren't numbers in a quarterly report. They were children, grandparents, nurses on night shift. Her words slammed into the chamber like a hammer, silencing even the storm for a heartbeat. Screens around the country lit up with the statistic, comment feeds flooding with grief and fury. Musk's jaw tightened, but he offered only a cool half-smile, as if daring her to keep pressing. Jordan shouted again, demanding order, while the chairman pounded his gavel to no avail. The hearing had become a battlefield where ideology, technology, and human loss clashed in real time, each side claiming the mantle of patriotism. Millions watching from living rooms and subway cars felt the lines blur. Was Musk the reckless tyrant Jasmine painted, or the visionary hero shielding America from its own government? As lightning lit the Capitol dome in violent white, the question hung heavier than the storm itself. Can justice carve a path through this partisan crossfire before the truth is buried beneath the noise? A sudden commotion at the side door sliced through the noise of arguments and pounding gavels. The chairman whispered with aides, then announced a surprise witness. Every camera in the chamber swung like a hunt for prey as a young man in a rumpled Starlink jacket stepped into the spotlight. His name badge read Ethan Rowe, Senior Systems Engineer, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights and something heavier. He looked barely 30, but the tremor in his hands betrayed the weight of what he carried. Jasmine leaned forward, sensing an opening that no one had predicted. Rowe cleared his throat, voice rough but steady enough to carry across the room. I was part of the network operations team during the Galveston blackout, he began, pausing as the storm outside growled like a restless animal. I can confirm that the delay was not a technical failure. We received internal directives labeled Operation Leverage instructing us to withhold activation until negotiation leverage with the Pentagon was secured. The phrase hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. The audience erupted, some gasped, others shouted curses, while millions watching at home flooded live chats with shock emojis and words that scorched the screen. On the giant broadcast ticker, markets convulsed in real time. Tesla -6%. SpaceX bonds on watch. Hashtag Operation Leverage trending to 18 million posts in under 5 minutes. Reporters typed furiously, the clatter of keys sounding like distant gunfire. Jasmine seized the moment. Mr. Rowe, she said, voice tight with urgency, are you testifying under oath that this directive came from Starlink's executive chain of command? Rowe nodded once, a small motion that detonated across the chamber like a missile. Yes. The memo required top-level clearance before implementation. Across the table, Musk's famous smirk wavered just enough for the cameras to catch the flicker. He adjusted his tie, fingers twitching against the microphone as if calculating a counter-strike. Anonymous memos, he said with forced casualness, do not equal corporate policy. Any engineer can slap a dramatic code name on a routine test. But the confidence in his voice carried a hairline crack, a subtle tremor that seasoned reporters recognized like a predator scenting blood. The chairman leaned forward, gavel frozen in midair, as the chamber dissolved into chaos. Some shouted for Musk's resignation, others demanded Rowe's arrest for breaching national security. Jasmine remained perfectly still, eyes locked on Musk, a single eyebrow arched as if to say checkmate. Millions of viewers felt the shift in their bones. The narrative had turned. The untouchable billionaire no longer untouchable. And as the storm hammered the Capitol dome, one question surged through every feed, every living room, every trading floor with the force of a nationwide verdict. If Operation Leverage is only the first crack, what darker commands are still buried inside the empire Elon Musk swore no one could ever expose? The chamber doors creaked open again, and a hush rolled through the room like a wave retreating before a tidal strike. Every camera pivoted in perfect unison as Linda Yaccarino, CEO of X, strode inside, flanked by federal marshals and a pair of congressional aides gripping a small, silver evidence case sealed with a crimson DOJ tag. She wore a charcoal suit and the expression of someone carrying a bomb disguised as a flash drive. The chairman's voice trembled slightly as he introduced her, but it was the faint metallic click of the case unlocking that made the audience collectively stop breathing. Linda placed a single USB drive on the witness table, its holographic seal glinting beneath the floodlights like a shard of captured lightning. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, eyes narrowing as Linda raised her right hand to swear the oath. "This device," Linda began, her voice calm but razor-edged, "contains internal X-server records documenting a covert protocol known inside the company as Project Blackout." She tapped the drive with one manicured finger, the sound small yet deafening. During the Senate's emergency vote on the National AI Oversight Act, 37 verified accounts belonging to sitting U.S. senators or simultaneously and temporarily suspended. Their posts, messages, and live feeds disappeared for precisely 47 minutes, the exact window in which the vote was scheduled to pass. Gasps broke like a dam. Reporters lunged forward. The storm outside answered with a sharp crack of thunder as if the sky itself recoiled. Screens across the nation lit up with real-time updates. Project Blackout confirmed. 37 senators silenced. Tesla -7% live. Comment sections exploded with accusations of treason and cries for immediate indictments. A mother in the gallery clutched her chest and whispered, "A shutdown Congress," a phrase ricocheted through the audience like a spark in dry tinder. Jasmine seized the moment, her voice a scalpel. "Ms. Yacarino, who authorized this protocol? Was it Elon Musk?" Linda hesitated, a flicker of fear or defiance crossing her eyes. "Project Blackout," she said carefully, "required executive approval." "Project Blackout," she said carefully, "required executive approval. The access key is restricted to a single account labeled EM." The name detonated through the chamber before she even finished the initials. Reporters shouted questions, senators shouted over each other, and outside the building protesters' chants grew loud enough to rattle the windows. Musk sat perfectly still, jaw tight, eyes fixed on Linda with a stare that could burn through steel. A faint tick pulsed at the corner of his mouth, the only betrayal of emotion. Jasmine leaned closer to her microphone, voice steady despite the chaos. 37 elected officials silenced during a federal vote, she said, each syllable landing like a hammer. "That isn't innovation, that's sabotage." The chairman's gavel hammered for order, but the room refused to settle. Wall Street tickers bled red, hashtags multiplied like sparks, and millions of viewers felt a chill that no storm could match. Was this audacious digital strike a rogue, gacked by ambitious engineers, or a calculated maneuver orchestrated by the richest man on Earth himself? If Project Blackout could silence the United States Senate for 47 minutes, what other invisible levers might still rest in Elon Musk's hands? The words Project Blackout were still echoing when Elon Musk suddenly shot to his feet, the chair behind him screeching across the marble floor like metal on bone. "This is a smear campaign," he thundered, voice amplified by a microphone he hadn't been granted. "You're all pawns of a surveillance state that fears what it can't control." His fist slammed the table so hard the water glasses jumped, a sharp crack slicing through the storm outside. "You bureaucrats build cages of regulation, while I build the rockets that keep this country alive. And you dare lecture me about democracy?" The gallery gasped as the richest man on Earth raised his voice to a roar that seemed to shake the cameras themselves. Security guards shifted forward, unsure whether to intervene, as Musk pivoted from the committee to the millions watching on livestream. "They spy on you while accusing me," he declared, jabbing a finger toward the lens as if speaking directly into every living room in America. "They call it oversight, but it's control. I give people freedom and censored speech, unfiltered debate, and this is my reward, a public crucifixion for refusing to kneel." His words detonated across social feeds, hashtags split instantly into warring camps, some hailing him as a hero of liberty, others calling for immediate arrest. Jasmine Crockett rose slowly, red suit blazing under the lights, her calm a weapon sharper than any shout. She waited for the nose to crest and then cut through it with a voice as steady as a judge's gavel. "Mr. Musk," she said, "the First Amendment protects speech from government censorship. It does not grant a billionaire the right to silence senators in the middle of a vote or to sell access to the highest bidder. Free speech is not a business model. It is a public trust." She held up a printed copy of the Bill of Rights, the parchment trembling only slightly in the storm's draft. "You've turned a sacred freedom into a cash machine and called it patriotism. That is not defense of democracy, that is its auction." The room fell into a dangerous quiet, the kind that feels like standing on the edge of a cliff with the ground trembling beneath your feet. Musk stared at Jasmine, eyes glittering with fury, a half-smile twitching like a barely restrained snarl. Somewhere in the gallery a protester shouted, "Hero." while another screamed traitor, the two words colliding in midair like shrapnel. Wall Street tickers bled deeper rate, Tesla minus 8.1%, SpaceX bonds halted, hashtag Musk vs Democracy trending #1 worldwide. Viewers across the country felt the ground shift beneath the argument. Was this the righteous rage of a patriot warning of government overreach, or the raw defiance of a man who believes he is untouchable? As lightning lit the Capitol windows in violent white, one question burned hotter than the storm itself. Is Elon Musk the last shield of American freedom or the architect of its silent surrender? An audible ripple of panic rolled through the gallery as traders, watching from New York to Singapore, began dumping shares in a frenzy, the echo of their keystrokes traveling through fiber lines faster than the thunder above the Capitol dome. A single headline blinked across every phone in the room: hashtag Musk meltdown hits 120m tweets in 27 minutes, and the air itself seemed to tighten, as if the building were inhaling beef for a catastrophic plunge. Jasmine Crockett sensed the shift and did something few politicians have the courage to attempt. She stopped speaking. She simply placed her hands on the table, locked eyes with Elon Musk, and let the silence expand like a pressure chamber. No accusation, no question, only the relentless ticking of the market's digital heartbeat pounding on screens behind her. Every second of quiet added another layer of dread. Viewers at home could hear the faint static of camera microphones and the distant rumble of thunder, a soundtrack that made the silence almost unbearable. Traders refreshed their dashboards again and again, each refresh revealing deeper losses. Tesla minus 9.6%. Starlink futures suspended, Dow Jones futures down 400 points. Musk's fingers tapped the wood with a subtle rhythm, but the famous smirk had drained from his face, leaving only a hard mask of calculation. He glanced toward his legal team, who whispered frantically while checking their own phones, the glow of collapsing numbers reflecting in their eyes. Aides scurried along the back wall, passing frantic notes to senators as the entire hearing room seemed to tilt toward Wall Street. What began as a political showdown was mutating into a financial avalanche, and every spectator could feel the gravity pulling Musk's empire toward the brink. Reporters fired off live updates: liquidity freeze imminent, credit agencies downgrade, each alert striking like a hammer on the fragile facade of invincibility that Musk had worn all morning. Jasmine remained motionless, her silence more devastating than any speech. It was the kind of silence that lets a nation watch a titan bleed in real time, the kind that makes even allies wonder if they should start running for cover. Outside, protesters chanted louder as lightning illuminated the Capitol steps, their voices rising with the plunging numbers. In living rooms, trading floors, and subway cars across America, millions felt the unsettling thrill of watching markets punish man faster than any gavel could fall. Was this merely the reflex of nervous investors, or the collective judgment of a country deciding that no fortune is larger than its patience? As another surge of red bled across the screens and the storm rattled the ancient windows, a single question burned through the chaos like a flare over a dark ocean. Will Wall Street deliver the verdict that politics cannot? Or will Elon Musk find a way to bend even the market to his will? A fresh rumble of thunder rolled over the Capitol as the chairman announced the next witness, and the room's attention snapped to a tall man in a navy suit carrying a thin black briefcase marked with the presidential seal. Dr. Adrian Wexler, senior advisor to the White House, moved with the restrained urgency of someone who knew the weight of every bite he carried. He placed the briefcase on the witness table, unlocked it with a quiet double click, and withdrew a tablet glowing with encrypted data. "Madam Chair," he began, voice low and deliberate, "the evidence you are about to see concerns the shy platform operated by Mr. Musk. Our analysis shows targeted manipulation of political content in the 48 hours leading up to the Michigan primary." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber as the main screen flickered to life, revealing heat maps of voter engagement, sharp spikes of disinformation, and algorithmic pathways glowing red like veins of molten metal. Dr. Wexler zoomed in on a set of cascading graphs. "This is not random virality," he said, tapping a node that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Our forensic models detected coordinated amplification of fabricated polls and false precinct closures. These pushes were timed to suppress turnout in 3 majority-minority districts. The source of the final command string traces back to a proprietary shy cluster accessible only to top-level executives." The audience erupted in overlapping cries of disbelief and fury. Real-time tickers across the broadcast flared again, Tesla minus 10.3%. Hashtag XAI election hack trending at 8:09 tweets in 14 minutes. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, eyes locked on Musk, her voice cut through the uproar with surgical precision. Dr. Wexler, in plain language, can this algorithm override federal election safeguards? The advisor hesitated, scanning his notes before answering. If left unchecked, yes. The system can drown certified information under an avalanche of targeted falsehoods if our election officials can respond. It doesn't break the law in a traditional sense. It bends the human mind faster than the law can act. The storm outside seemed to answer with a single, violent crack, shaking the antique chandeliers overhead. Musk adjusted his tie, a faint smile flickering like a spark on wet tinder. "Algorithms are mirrors, not manipulators," he said, voice calm but dripping with challenge. "They reflect what people already want to see. If your citizens choose chaos, don't blame the mirror for the face it shows." His words floated over the room like a dark perfume, part philosophy, part dare. Some in the gallery clapped, others shouted liar. And the tension snapped into a dangerous equilibrium where admiration and terror coexisted in the same breath. Jasmine did not sit back. "A mirror that distorts is no mirror at all," she countered, each syllable carrying the force of the storm outside. "And a man who profits from distortion is no defender of democracy." The room fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the sound of rain hammering the windows and the relentless scroll of market losses on the overhead screens. Millions of viewers leaned closer to their screens, chilled by a threat they could neither see nor touch, as a single question burned through the static of fear. Can a democracy built on trust survive when invisible code decides what its citizens believe to be true? The thunder outside felt almost synchronized with the tension inside as Elon Musk leaned forward, elbows planted, eyes glittering like polished steel. The faint smirk returned, sharper now, carrying the bite of a man who thrives on chaos. "Your government fears me," he said, voice pitched just high enough to slice through the chamber's restless murmur, "because I build what they can't. Rockets at work, satellites that don't fall apart in committee hearings, algorithms that actually learn instead of crawling behind outdated laws. They drown in paperwork while I reach Mars." His words cracked across the room like a lightning strike, drawing a startled gasp from some senators and scattered cheers from a handful of supporters who dared to clap before security hushed them. "They call it oversight," he added, sneer curling into a taunt, "but what they really fear is that I don't need their permission to change the world." The gallery erupted into overlapping shouts, some hailing him as a visionary, others cursing his arrogance, until Jasmine Crockett rose in a blaze of red that silenced even the thunder for a breath. She stepped closer to the witness table, her heels striking the marble floor like a countdown. "You build cages," she fired back, each word crisp as broken glass, "and call them playgrounds. Your rockets may leave the atmosphere, but your companies trap citizens in systems they can't escape. Lock contracts, algorithmic manipulation, and blackouts that kill while you bargain for billions. That's not freedom. That's control wrapped in shiny branding." The crowd roared as if a dam had burst, chants erupting from every corner. "Answer the question. Answer the question." Musk's jaw tightened. He leaned toward the microphone but said nothing, letting the nose wash over him like a shield. Cameras caught the twitch of his fingers against the table, a subtle rhythm that betrayed the calculations running behind his eyes. Markets flicker on the overhead screens. Tesla minus 10.9%. SpaceX futures frozen. Hashtag Musk under oath trending past 150 meters posts in 40 minutes. Jasmine held his gaze, refusing to look at the chaos, her stillness a counterpoint to the storm of voices demanding an answer. The chairman banged the gavel to restore order, but the sound only fed the frenzy. Supporters shouted patriot, while protesters screamed dictator. The two words colliding in the air like sparks from a live wire. Musk finally exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath that fogged the microphone. The faint smile was gone, replaced by an unreadable mask that made the silence heavier than any outburst. Viewers across the nation leaned closer to their screens, sensing the fragile edge where power and panic meet. And as the rain hammered the ancient windows, one question rolled through the country like a gathering storm. Will Elon Musk hold the line of defiance, or will the relentless pressure crack the man who claims to hold the future in his hands? A sudden chime from the committee clerk's phone sliced through the chamber like a scalpel. Every head turned as aides rushed forward with a printed sheet still warm from the secure fax room. The chairman skimmed the first line, his face blanching to the color of the storm outside. "Members," he said, voice tight, "we have just received a verified leak from a second whistleblower inside X's election integrity team." The big screens flared alive with a single Slack message, captured in stark black and white. "Delay Michigan filter until EM approves." 3 words "until EM approves" lit the room like a detonation. Reporters leapt to their feet, cameras firing in manic bursts, as the ticker at the bottom of the broadcast screamed breaking updates. Tesla minus 12.4%, SpaceX credit halted, #delay Michigan surges past 2 OM posts in 19 minutes. Viewers across the country felt the floor of certainty drop beneath them. It wasn't just a technical glitch anymore. It was a smoking gun pointing directly at the initials everyone in the world recognized. Musk sat stone still, the corner of his jaw tightening against an invisible vice, while his lawyers whispered frantic calculations that no algorithm could rescue. Jasmine Crockett seized the moment, her voice cutting through the chaos like a conductor commanding a storm. "Mr. Musk," she said, lifting the printed Slack log high enough for every camera to catch, "this directive delayed verified election data, a federal primary. It carries your initials. Will you deny this too?" The chamber erupted. Shouts of "answer her" collided with cries of "due process." While outside, the sound of thousands of protesters rose to a fevered roar. Helicopter lights swept across the rain-slick Capitol steps as new crowds surged through the barricades, waving signs that read "Co. is not a king" and "nitrogen monoxide billionaire" above the ballot. Inside, Musk finally leaned toward the microphone, but instead of words he released a single dry laugh that sent a chill racing across the room. "Slack jokes are not policy," he said, the smirk gone but the defiance intact. "You're treating a screenshot like a constitution." His voice was calm, but the market tickers behind him bled deeper crimson with every syllable. Jasmine did not blink. "A constitution protects voters," she replied, her tone a quiet blade. "What protects them from you?" The silence that followed was so complete that the audience could hear the stormwater gurgling through the Capitol drains. Phones across America vibrated with push alerts, each more alarming than the last. DA plunges 800 points. Pentagon requests emergency cybersecurity briefing. National Guard on standby in Washington. Millions of viewers leaned forward, sensing that this was more than a financial tremor. It was the revelation of a deeper machinery of power hidden behind lines of code. And as the storm pounded the dome and the Slack message glowed like an open wound on every screen, one question carved itself into the country's collective consciousness with the force of a verdict still to come. If a single unseen command can tilt an election, how many more secrets are buried inside the empire of the man who swears the future belongs to him? The storm outside had faded to a low, menacing rumble, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Inside the Capitol chamber every light felt hotter, every microphone sharper, every camera hungrier. Jasmine Crockett straightened her notes, then pushed them aside, as though paper was too fragile for what had to be said next. She fixed her eyes on Elon Musk, the man who had spent the morning dodging bullets of evidence and turning accusations into riddles. Her voice cut through the tension like a surgical blade. "Mr. Musk," she said, each syllable ringing in the charged air, "did you sell American user data to a foreign government in exchange for Starlink missile contracts?" The room froze. A collective inhale swelled the air like the moment before a dam bursts. Musk's gaze locked on Jasmine, and for the first time all morning the billionaire looked truly human, jaw tight, pupils narrowing, the faint tremor of a man who knows the next second could redefine his life. He opened his mouth, lips parting to form a word, and then nothing. No sound, no denial, only a silence so dense it seemed to warp the air around him. Somewhere in the production booth, a technician sensed history and triggered a graphic. On every live feed, from CNN to TikTok, a red countdown clock flashed onto the corner of the screen, its digits blazing like a warning flare. 60. 59. 58. Viewers across America leaned toward their screens, heartbeat sensing to the relentless descent. In trading rooms from New York to Tokyo, brokers paused mid-keystroke. In living rooms and subway cars, millions mouthed the question that hung over the Capitol like a guillotine. Will he answer? Musk's legal team whispered urgently, sliding notes toward him, but he didn't move. His fingers drummed a slow, uneven rhythm against the oak table, the sound picked up by hot microphones and broadcast like a Morse code of dread. Jasmine remained perfectly still, eyes unblinking, her red suit a blazing reminder of the human stakes buried inside the numbers on the screens. Behind her, The market tickers bled deeper. Tesla minus 13.8%. SpaceX bonds frozen. Hashtag Musk silence surges past to 5om tweets in under 10 minutes. Reporters in the gallery stood without realizing it, tens hovering in midair. A child's cry outside the chamber doors pierced the stillness before being swallowed by the storm. The chairman gripped his gavel, but hesitated, aware that any sound might break the spell binding the nation. Musk's eyes flickered toward the cameras, then back to Jasmine, as if calculating whether a single word could cost more than an empire. The countdown clock hit 30 and the silence became unbearable, an invisible weight pressing against the walls and the collective chest of a country watching a titan teeter. And as the numbers kept falling, millions of viewers felt the same terrifying thought take shape. If Elon Musk refuses to speak, will that silence become the loudest confession in American history or the perfect weapon to keep his secrets buried forever? The chamber became a vacuum, every molecule of air drawn into the gravity of a single unanswered question. Cameras held their breath with the crowd, lenses trembling as if the silence itself carried weight. On every broadcast, the countdown clock kept pulsing in crimson digits: 61, 60. 59. Its relentless descent hypnotizing a nation. Not a senator moved. Not a reporter coughed. Even the storm outside seemed to freeze in mid-rumble, as if nature refused to interrupt the most expensive silence in modern history. Phones vibrated in millions of pockets, lighting up with a blizzard of push alerts. Hashtag Musk silent. Hashtag democracy paused. Number 61 seconds Thatchinate. Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok servers strained under a surge of comments. Why isn't he speaking? Is this the admission? This feels like Watergate in real time. Market dashboards bled deeper rate. Tesla minus 15%. SpaceX bonds frozen. Exit revenue emergency halt. Traders from New York to Singapore stop typing and stare at the same countdown. Their own fortunes chained to a man who refused to make a sound. Jasmine Crockett remained motionless, eyes locked on Musk as if her stillness alone could hold him to account. Her heartbeat hammered loud enough for the boom mix to capture the faint thrum, sending a ghost of rhythm into living rooms across the country. Viewers leaned closer to their screens, matching her breath without realizing it, each second of silence pulling them deeper into a suspense no script could match. A mother in the gallery gripped her child's hand until her knuckles turned white. A veteran in the front row whispered, "This feels like the Cuban Missile Crisis," his voice barely audible but carried by the microphones like a prophecy. The clock dropped to 30. 29. 28. Musk sat perfectly still, eyes unfocused, the faint reflection of falling stock prices flickering across his pupils. His lawyer slid a note across the table. He didn't even glance at it. A single bead of sweat rolled down his temple and paused at the corner of his jaw, catching the overhead lights like a microscopic star. Viewers around the world dissected every twitch on social media in real time. Did his eyebrow move? Was that a nod? As though decoding a silent confession. 10, 9, 8. The sound of rain finally returned, tapping the Capitol windows like a slow applause. 3, 2, 1. The clock hit 0. Still no answer. A collective exhale swept the chamber, a sound like a collapsing lung, as the chairman lowered his gavel without a word. Jasmine's gaze never wavered. Across the nation, people stared at their screens, chilled by the realization that nothing, no denial, no admission could be more explosive than the void itself. And as the storm outside finally broke into a furious downpour, one question burned hotter than any accusation, searing itself into the country's collective memory. What truths hide inside 61 seconds of silence that no 1,000 words could ever reveal? The final second of the countdown bled into a silence so heavy it seemed to bend the chamber's walls. Then crack. The chairman's gavel shattered the tension, the sound ricocheting like a gunshot through marble and glass. "This session is suspended until further notice," he declared, voice tight with something between fear and awe. The microphones went dead. The official feed cut to a wide shot, but the damage was already alive on every screen in America. Outside the Capitol, reporters erupted into a frenzy, amidst the storm pounding the steps. News banners ignited in real time. Markets lose $76 billion in 4 hours. Tesla down 17%. Hashtag Musk exodus trending #1 worldwide. Satellite trucks jammed the avenues, their dish antennas spinning toward the black sky as if trying to catch the next flash of history. Inside the hearing room, aides scrambled to secure evidence drives while senators whispered in urgent clusters. Jasmine Crockett stood slowly, the crimson of her suit glowing like a warning flare against the cold marble. Cameras zoomed to catch her every move as she gathered her papers with deliberate calm, the very image of controlled victory. Musk remained seated, jaw locked, eyes unreadable behind the storm of flashbulbs, a statue carved from defiance and calculation. For a heartbeat their profiles shared the same frame. The congresswoman who had asked the killer question and the billionaire who had answered with silence. Security ushered Jasmine toward the side exit, where a crush of journalists surged like a breaking tide. Microphones lunged forward, voices overlapping. Is he guilty? What happens next? But she paused only long enough to let the cameras find her eyes. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the roar like a blade. Truth has its own gravity, she said, each word deliberate, and it always pulls everything back to center. The line flashed across social media within seconds, climbing past 1 million retweets before she had even cleared the hallway. Outside, the chaos widened. Protesters clashed with counter-protesters on the rain-slick steps, their chants dueling in the night. Justice now. Against leave Musk alone. Helicopter searchlights carved white scars through the storm clouds, while Wall Street analysts gave frantic interviews predicting a global liquidity shock. Trading platforms crashed under the surge as investors dumped SpaceX bonds and Tesla options in a single, panicked wave. Musk finally emerged behind a wall of security, expression frozen somewhere between iron control and volcanic rage. He said nothing as cameras fired like artillery, his silence now a currency more volatile than any stock. Viewers around the world watched the two motorcades pull away in opposite directions, one a symbol of rising political force, the other of a fortune suddenly in freefall, wondering if they had just witnessed the beginning of a billionaire's collapse or the calculated pause of a strategist preparing his next move. And as the storm hammered Washington into a haze of sirens and flashing lights, a single question burned through the night like a fuse waiting to ignite. Is this silence the opening act of Elon Musk's downfall, or the first move in a counter-strike that no one yet dares to imagine? Rain-slick streets from Miami to Seattle erupted into a single, throbbing heartbeat of defiance as the Capitol hearing silence spilled into the night. By dawn, coast-to-coast demonstrations had already shut down highways and city squares, a rolling thunder of voices carrying one demand through the wet autumn air: no billionaire above the law. Helicopter feeds showed crowds surging across Times Square like a human tide, while drones captured Chicago's magnificent mile drowned in a sea of homemade signs. Truth has gravity. 61 seconds equals 76 billion. Justice for the 21. Sirens wailed as police lines strained against the pressure of tens of thousands who refused to go home, their chants echoing off skyscrapers and shattering the pre-dawn quiet. In Houston, families of the hurricane victims who died during the Starlink blackout gathered outside the federal courthouse, their grief sharpened into fury. Cameras closed in on Maria Alvarez, mother of a 9-year-old boy who suffocated when emergency ventilators lost power. Rain streaked down her face as she held up a framed photo of her son. The glass cracked from the crush of the crowd. They called it a glitch, she said, voice shaking but unbroken. My child was not a glitch. He was alive, and they sold his life for leverage. Beside her, Nurse Jordan Fields, who lost 2 patients that night, described watching monitors flicker and die, all waiting for a signal that never returned. We begged for help, he whispered into the microphone, but the sky stayed silent. Their testimonies spread across social media in seconds, flooding feeds with raw images of loss that no algorithm could sanitize. Markets buckled again as the protests gained momentum. Tesla's after-hours trading plunged another 4%. Insurance stocks trembled as analysts warned of systemic moral risk. Governors in half a dozen states declared states of emergency, mobilizing National Guard units not to contain violence, but to protect demonstrators from counter-protesters already threatening retaliation. Overhead, news choppers hovered like restless vultures, while giant LED billboards replayed the Capitol countdown clock on a loop, each hic a reminder of a question still unanswered. Through it all, Jasmine Crockett's quiet words, truth has its own gravity, became the movement's rallying cry. Protesters spray-painted the phrase on barricades and shouted it through bullhorns until it rolled across the continent like a national anthem of resistance. In Los Angeles, a flash mob orchestra played a mournful dirge outside the SpaceX headquarters as thousands held their phones aloft, screens glowing with the frozen image of Musk's silent face. Children clutched handmade posters. Veterans raised flags streaked with rain. Strangers embraced in shared outrage and unexpected hope. From Wall Street boardrooms to Midwestern diners, millions watched the live streams with a single, unshakable thought. This was no longer just a market crisis or a political spectacle, it was a moral reckoning. And as the chants thundered through the night and the storm clouds gathered again over Washington, one question pulsed louder than sirens or stock tickers, demanding an answer that no billionaire could buy. Will the fury of an awakened public finally force real accountability? Or will the silence that shattered a nation become its permanent cage? The morning after the protests, the U.S. Senate chamber felt less like a legislative hall and more like a war room. Sleep-deprived lawmakers crowded around mahogany desks as breaking alerts screamed across their tablets. Tesla -18%. Dow futures -900. #truth has gravity still trending at 300 meters posts. With markets bleeding and crowds outside refusing to disperse, Majority Leader Grace Hollander strode to the podium and dropped a draft bill onto the clerk's desk. Emergency AI Regulation Act, she declared, her voice echoing off the chamber's marble walls. We will no longer allow an invisible code to weaponize our democracy. Gasps rippled through the press gallery as she outlined immediate federal oversight of large-scale algorithms, with penalties reaching into the billions for any company caught manipulating elections. But the counterattack came fast. Musk's allies in Congress, led by Representative Jim Jordan and a tight phalanx of tech-funded senators, launched a barrage of procedural maneuvers. Motions to postpone, demands for new hearings, filibuster threats all fired like precision missiles to stall the vote. Behind the scenes, lobbyists blanketed the Capitol with whispered promises of campaign cash and veiled warnings of economic catastrophe if the bill advanced. Live tickers in the hallway tracked their progress like a scoreboard. Delay motions filed. 7. Emergency vote clock pushed back. 3 hours. Into this chaos walked Jasmine Crockett, her crimson suit now a national symbol of defiance. She requested recognition and, after a tense pause, the presiding officer nodded. Cameras swung toward her as the chamber fell into a brittle silence. This is not a partisan moment, she began, her voice steady but charged with the energy of the protests outside. Justice is not partisan, it's human. The right to vote, to speak, to live free from algorithmic manipulation belongs to every American, regardless of party or bank account. Her words ignited the chamber like a spark in dry timber. Senators who had sat frozen through hours of procedural jousting rose to their feet, first a few Democrats, then a cluster of Republicans from storm-ravaged states, then nearly half the room. The gallery erupted in applause that drowned out the pounding gavel outside. Protesters watching on giant screens cheer as Jasmine's speech rocketed across social platforms, trending past Musk's own hashtags within minutes. Analysts whispered that the tide was turning, that the billionaire's money might finally meet a wall stronger than cash, a coalition of ordinary citizens and lawmakers willing to sell their democracy. And as the Senate prepared for an emergency night vote, a single question cut through the roar of chants and the glow of trading screens. Can Jasmine outmaneuver the billionaire lobbyists before they buy one last delay and bury the truth beneath another mountain of money? Dawn broke over a jittery planet as the shockwaves from Washington crossed oceans faster than the sunrise. In London, the FTSE opened to a blood-red screen. Starlink Holdings -14%, Tesla Europe -11%. Trading volumes tripled the average before the first coffee reached the trading floor. Paris followed with a flash crash in aerospace equities, while Frankfurt suspended derivatives tied to SpaceX bonds after a sudden €20 billion sell-off. By midday Tokyo time, the Nikkei was in freefall and Singapore brokers were fielding emergency calls from sovereign funds desperate to unwind Starlink contracts before American regulators froze them. A Japanese defense spokesperson told NHK, "All Starlink deployments are under review," a statement so rare it detonated across Asian markets like a warning siren. In Brussels, EU commissioners convened an unscheduled session behind closed doors, debating whether to blacklist Starlink from future infrastructure tenders. A leaked memo from the European External Action Service described the company as a potential vector of democratic destabilization. Berlin. Officials hinted that the European Space Agency might terminate a satellite launch partnership worth €7.6 billion, sending aerospace suppliers scrambling. In Canberra, the Australian Prime Minister announced a temporary suspension, new Starlink defense contracts pending a security audit, while South Korea's National Assembly called an emergency debate on foreign tech dominance. Global headlines scrolled in frantic succession. Starlink banned from NATO exercises. India reviews space spectrum rights. EU prepares sanctions against Musk enterprises. Amid the panic, Elon Musk broke a 10-hour silence with a single tweet, 3 cryptic emojis, a chess piece, or rocket, and a black hole. No text, no explanation. Within minutes, the post detonated across every platform, spawning millions of speculative threads. Was the chess piece a signal of a counter-strategy? Was the black hole a warning of financial collapse or a promise to swallow his enemies? Traders tried to decode it like scripture. Algorithms spun the characters into thousands of predictive models that only deepened the confusion. Tesla's stock briefly bounced 3%, then plunged again as analysts called the tweet a digital middle finger to global regulators. In Washington, Jasmine Crockett watched the market chaos from her office as foreign embassies lit up her phone with cautious inquiries. Protest leaders outside the Capitol streamed the global reaction on massive screens, their chants mixing with live footage of collapsing indices and emergency press conferences. The world was no longer just watching the richest man alive. It was beginning to isolate him. Yet the tweet lingered like a dark riddle, a reminder that Musk had built his fortune on turning pressure into propulsion from Brussels to Beijing. Policymakers and investors stared at their screens, hearts racing in the same rhythm as the storm that still circled Washington. And as the cryptic emojis continued to spiral across the planet, one question cut through the panic with surgical precision. Will the combined weight of global markets and governments finally break the world's richest man? Or will Elon Musk turn international pressure into the launch fuel for his next unpredictable move? Gray morning light pooled across the marble floors of the Capitol as Congress reconvened for what the press had already branded Judgment Day. Armed security lined the corridors, their radios crackling with coded updates, while camera crews jockeyed for position outside the chamber doors. At precisely 9 o'clock, the double doors swung open and Elon Musk entered, flanked by a phalanx of lawyers in dark suits, their faces tight with the gravity of a man walking into history. The once swaggering billionaire kept his eyes forward, jaw locked, the flashbulbs capturing every flicker of tension like a time-lapse of power under siege. Traders around the globe watched the live feed as though it were a market ticker, fingers hovering over sell buttons in case a single expression wiped out another billion in value. The chairman wasted no time. Gavel raised, voice ringing with the authority of a nation on edge. He announced that a bipartisan select committee had reached an unprecedented decision after reviewing weeks of testimony and classifying evidence. In light of the material presented, he said, pausing as the chamber held its breath, this committee will refer multiple criminal counts to the Department of Justice for prosecution, including conspiracy to interfere with federal elections and unauthorized transfer of defense data. The words detonated across the room like a seismic charge. Senators from both parties rose in unplanned unison, some applauding, others simply staring as if absorbing the weight of an event that could redefine the boundaries of corporate power. Outside, the roar of protesters surged through the rotunda and into the chamber microphones. Nitrogen monoxide billionaire above the law. Stock tickers flashed red again, algorithms struggling to keep pace with a decision that threatened to collapse entire markets before the lunch bell. Musk sat motionless, a single muscle twitching at his temple, while his lead counsel scribbled furiously on a yellow pad. Jasmine Crockett, seated directly across the aisle, met his gaze without a word, her silence now carrying the inevitability of gravity itself. The gavel struck once more, sealing the referrals and propelling the case out of politics and into the crucible of the courts. Across America and far beyond, millions watching felt the shiver of a new uncertainty take hold. A single question surging louder than the chants outside. Will the courts succeed where politics failed? Or will Elon Musk's next move bend justice to his will before the first verdict is ever read? The chamber lights dimmed to a reverent hush as Jasmine Crockett rose from her seat, the crimson of her suit blazing against the austere marble like a flare against night. Senators who moments ago traded procedural barbs now stood in a silence so deep it felt almost sacred. She stepped to the podium without notes, her palms flat against the wood, eyes sweeping the room and then locking onto the cameras that carried her image to every phone and living room in America. Her voice began as a low, steady current and grew with each word until it filled the chamber with the force of a storm. Technology is our servant, she declared, the phrase echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Never our master. When algorithms choose who sees the truth and when satellites decide who lives or dies, democracy itself is under siege. She spoke of the hurricane victims whose ventilators fell silent, of voters in Michigan misled by invisible of workers whose labor built empires, but whose names were erased in quarterly reports. To every family who lost a loved one because profit came before humanity, she said, her voice breaking for the first time, I carry your pain into this fight. To every child who wonders if truth can survive a billionaire's swim, I promise, you are not alone. Senators who had sparred with her for weeks wiped at their eyes. Staffers in the gallery clutched each other's hands. Outside, giant screens replayed her words in real time as crowds erupted in cheers. Within minutes, hashtags exploded across every platform. Hashtag stand with Jasmine. Hashtag truth has gravity. Hashtag democracy speaks. Surging past 100 million posts before she even left the podium. And as her final sentence reverberated across the globe, a question larger than any verdict ignited in the minds of millions. Can one fearless voice spark a movement powerful enough to outlast money, algorithms, and the silence of those who once seemed untouchable? Rain-washed streets across the country glow in the blue light of phone screens as the final broadcast cut to a sweeping montage of America awake and afraid. Nurses in Houston stood shoulder to shoulder outside a flood-scarred hospital, their uniforms still damp from the night storm, raising homemade signs that read truth has gravity. In Detroit, engineers who once built parts for Starlink huddled around a single laptop in a shuttered factory, streaming the Capitol feat and nodding silently as Jasmine's words replayed. On a porch in Galveston, storm survivors lit candles for the 21 lives lost during the blackout, their flames flickering defiantly against the restless wind. Each face carried a different story, but the same unshakable conviction that the power of many can dwarf the wealth of one. The camera cut back to Jasmine Crockett standing alone beneath the Capitol rotunda, the echo of her speech still vibrating in the marble like an aftershock. She looked directly into the lens, eyes shining with the weight of a nation that had marched, chanted, and refused to be silenced. Her voice was quiet now, but each word landed like a promise. Democracy lives only when we defend it, she said, the sentence ringing with the authority of lived truth. She let the silence breathe for a heartbeat, then leaned closer. What will you do next? The live stream's comment bar erupted instantly, first a trickle of personal testimonies, then a flood. A firefighter from Michigan wrote of blocking false precinct closures with his own hands. A grandmother from New Orleans described forming a neighborhood watch against disinformation. Thousands more followed, their words scrolling upward like a rising tide of resolve. Outside, the storm clouds began to break, revealing a thin band of morning light across the Capitol dome. And as millions watched ordinary citizens claim their own small pieces of history, one question burned brighter than the sunrise itself. Will this chorus of defiance grow into the movement that finally ends the age of untouchable power? True power does not belong to money, algorithms, or headlines. It belongs to ordinary people who refuse to stay silent. Jasmine's fight reminds us that technology should serve humanity, not rule it, and that even the most untouchable empire can be held accountable when citizens stand together. Your voice, your vote, your daily choices are the real engines of change. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of it. What will you do today to defend truth in your own community? And how will you stand when silence tries to buy the future? Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.